Thank you so much for coming at 4:20 or just after 4:20. I know that many people are taking a break, which is great. And for you brave folks that are joining me this afternoon, thank you. I want to thank Che as well and the entire team that has put together this incredible event. I'm just looking around. I've spent the entire day walking around, talking to people, and really enjoying just being here. And so I'm grateful that you've invited me to talk about this topic today. So to give you a little bit of background, over there in the cheap seats over there, you can hear me? Thumbs up? Okay, cool. So I am a cannabis lawyer, and I'm from Toronto, and I'm not a typical cannabis lawyer who practices on Bay Street. I am dedicated to, I guess, underdog, small business people who need to be in the cannabis industry, because I need to be in the cannabis industry, whatever that industry is. And so throughout my life, I have been a fervent proponent of this amazing plant, this flower. And so it began, I just want to tell you a brief journey of a kid, 26-year-old kid, who got out of law school, became a lawyer, and then was like, what the fuck did I do? I didn't want to be a lawyer. I didn't want to practice law. My dad's a lawyer, of course. Any lawyers out there? Any other lawyers? This is not the Lawyers Anonymous group, obviously. So immediately I decided, I got to do something else. And I went to visit my brother in Guelph, and he took me to one of Canada's first hemp stores, Hemp Asylum in Guelph. And on the counter was this stack of flyers, and I was looking around at the pipes and bongs, and I'm like, I love this place. Look at the flyer, it says, Hemp Boy launches constitutional challenge. I was like, shit, this is a constitutional challenge of the cannabis law? Oh my God, I'm in. How do I help? Where do I start? How do I Hemp Boy, who is this Hemp Boy? So I started looking online. This is 1996, okay? In 1996, the internet was just kind of getting going. And so, I could email Hemp Boy. And I emailed him. His name was Chris Clay. He's this cute little white kid, 26-year-old as well. And he had started up a hemp store as well called Hemp Nation in London, Ontario. And his method of bringing a voice to the plant was to sell seeds. I mean, he sold pipes, bongs, paraphernalia, everything that hemp stores did, but he also sold seeds. And for 2 years he sold seeds so people could grow their own, and the police did nothing. Until one day they decided, you know what, we're going to arrest you, Chris. I'm so sorry, but we're going to arrest you. And they confiscated all of his inventory. And he was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to launch a test case. I'm going to sue the government. I'm going to go after them, right? And then Professor Alan Young, who is an Osgoode Law Hall professor, he took the case. And him and Paul Burstein, a criminal lawyer in Toronto, took the case, and they went all the way to the Supreme Court. So from 1996 to 2003, this long case, they joined with another 2 BC cases, David Malmo Levine and Randy Kane, and they formed the triumvirate of the first time in Canadian law that we got judges to think about the possession of cannabis and why it was illegal and why it shouldn't be illegal. And that was an amazing feat. Chris Clay's trial judge was James McCart. He was 80 years old, and he was a judge on this case. And he wrote a judgment you wouldn't believe. This lit up my life. He listed in paragraph 25, and you can read it in my book, paragraph 25, the 13 ways that it was not dispelling the myths about cannabis, okay? So this was the way I cut my teeth on this. I decided I would film a documentary about this case. And so Chris Clay said, yes, I could film, and I filmed the entire trial and made a documentary called Stoned. And Stoned was broadcast on CBC nationally for, I don't know, a couple of years. It was their most favorite documentary, 1998. Okay, so then I'm still not satisfied. I'm not a real political active guy, but in my own way, I really wanted to tell people that cannabis laws are wrong. Any kind of law that's going to limit people's freedom with the use, the growth, the selling of cannabis is fundamentally wrong. In the same way that we shouldn't limit roses. So I think it was my need to be an actor that led me to the New York Neighborhood Playhouse to study acting. And I really wanted to be in movies because I thought that would help. Turns out I can act, but my real strength was in telling stories. And so I decided that I would tell a story, and it would be a one-man show. And I called it The Reefer Man. And The Reefer Man was born in 2004. 2004, I toured across the country and at fringe festivals all across Canada. And it was my way of telling the story of a lawyer who grew amazing award-winning weed in his basement and getting arrested, the story of a grower. Because I've always identified with growers. I cannot grow cannabis, but I wanted to tell stories about growers that could. And this is in 2004. It's still illegal. We don't have any movement from the government. I think Harper was in power then. And then, okay, I decided after a number of years of plays and falling in love with my wife, and we made more plays and short films together, we would have a family. So we had a family, and at that point I'm looking at her and she's looking at me like, how are we gonna make some money? Okay, maybe I should go back and be a lawyer. Okay. So I went back and I started practicing law with my dad. For 3 years with my dad. That was, it was really painful. My dad, he's a bankruptcy lawyer. And that word is very fitting for him. I love my dad, but he's a challenging individual. But he taught me how to be a lawyer, which was great. And then a couple of years after doing other law in fraud recovery, I got a case on my desk that the lawyer that I was working for at the time didn't want. And it was a retail case of cannabis where this chain of dispensaries from Vancouver were arrested. They were arrested, and it was my job to defend them. Constitutional challenge. And it was that point I was like, cannabis law. Cannabis law. This is great. This is 2016. And Trudeau had just won the election. And everybody thought cannabis was legal because Trudeau said, we're going to legalize. And he won, right? And everybody thought, okay, so there are 100 dispensaries in Toronto. Amazing. But it wasn't. It wasn't like that. And as soon as I got my hands on Bill C-45 to read it, I was so disappointed. I was so shaken that the people who are going to draft the law for the way we treat cannabis was merely a rebranding of the existing drug law, the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act. That's what it was. It was a rebranding. Because the penalties are still the same. In fact, they're increased from the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act. Let's not kid around. The penalties under the Cannabis Act are severe, even for simple possession. If you possess over 50 grams of cannabis, you can be considered